land of 14,000 square miles is small in size, but it has played a great role in human history. It is the land where lie the ruins of the world's most ancient civilizations. It is the land of prophets and Christ, who with their immortal teachings and divine laws directed the course of humanity towards justice, peace, and brotherly love by producing the three monotheistic faiths. From the grounds of this land spread the flames which established the rule of moral and religious beliefs between people blinded by error and idolatry. When you hear this sound, please change slides on the screen.
Jerusalem, standing amid the poor Judean hills, has been chosen by God to be the bulwark of monotheism. It is the sacred city of half of the human race, being the religious capital of the three monotheistic faiths. For the Jews, it is the symbol of their past glories and the hope of their future. For the Christians, it is the city of Jesus' last ministry, the city which saw Jesus die on the cross and rise from the dead. For the Muslims, it is the city where the prophet Muhammad is believed to have ascended into heaven. Jerusalem, source of faiths and spiritual laws, and the world's most sacred and loved city, has been also a city of terror, war, and blood. Although its name means peace, the sword has been devouring its children throughout its long history. There have been more wars fought at its gates than in any other city in the world.
The present impressive walls of Jerusalem are an agglomeration from different periods of construction. They were rebuilt in their final form as they appear today by the Turks under their great ruler Suleiman the Magnificent in 1542 AD. In these walls, which are 2.5 miles in circumference and average 40 feet in height, there are 34 towers and 8 gates.
The Mount of Olives is located east of Jerusalem across the Kidron Valley. Its summit, which is 300 feet higher than Jerusalem, offers a magnificent view of the old city of Jerusalem and a striking panorama of the Judean hills, as far as the Dead Sea and the mountains of Moab on the east side. It is the mount where Christ ascended into heaven, foretold the destruction of Jerusalem, taught the Lord's Prayer, and came often for meditation and prayer.
The Acts tell how Jesus took his disciples to a mount called Olives, and how, after blessing them, he ascended to heaven. The top of the Mount of Olives is considered to be the site of the Ascension. In the Acts, it is said that the disciples departed from the Mount of Olives, which was a Sabbath day's journey away from Jerusalem. This is the distance which approximately separates the site of the Ascension from Jerusalem. The present small chapel is an edifice built by the Crusaders in the court of their church to contain the rock with the legendary footprint of Christ, made when he ascended to heaven.
The Church of the Paternoster is built on the traditional site, where Jesus taught his disciples the Lord's Prayer and foretold the terrible destruction of Jerusalem.
You see all these, do you not? Truly, I say to you, there will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down.
Here he revealed his last coming and the end of the world.
For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All this is but the beginning of the birth pangs.
Constantine built a church on the top of the Mount of Olives to commemorate the words of Jesus about the destruction of Jerusalem and his last coming. Constantine's church was destroyed in 614 by the Persians and rebuilt in the 12th century by the Crusaders. In 1868, Princess Aurelia de Bossy de la Tour d'Auvergne bought the site and donated it to France. In 1875, she built a convent for the order of the Carmelite nuns. Inside the church and on the walls of the cloister, the Lord's Prayer is written in 62 languages.
The Garden of Gethsemane, which is one of the most important sights to see in the Holy Land, lies at the foot of the Mount of Olives. It appears today as it was 20 centuries ago. On the opposite hill, across the Kidron Valley, sea followed city. But this garden is still kept almost as it was at the time of Jesus, with maybe the same olive trees. St. John spoke of it as a garden over the brook Kidron. It was a spot favored by Jesus. This garden, where Jesus on his last night underwent the most sorrowful hour of his passion, the hour in which he trembled in his human nature, choosing to suffer and die on the cross, taking upon himself the sins of all mankind. Father, if thou be willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. Here then Judas came with the servants of the high priest and betrayed his master.
Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, "The one I shall kiss is the man. Seize him." And he came up to Jesus at once and said, "Hail, Master," and he kissed him. In the memorable Garden of Gethsemane, there are 8 olive trees whose age is lost in antiquity. Some botanists claim they may be 3,000 years old. Josephus tells that Titus cut down all trees in the environs of Jerusalem in 70 AD. If these trees escape destruction, they are the very contemporaries of Christ, as they are Roman olive trees. If not, they are without doubt the shoots of those under which Jesus prayed that night of his agony. The olive tree does not die.
In 379, the Byzantines built the first basilica over the place made holy by the prayer and agony of Christ. This basilica was one of the first to be destroyed in 614 by the Persians. In the 12th century, the Crusaders rebuilt the church. The present church, which is one of Jerusalem's most beautiful churches, was built in 1919 to 1924. Since 16 nations contributed to its construction, it was named Church of All Nations.
The dim light filtering through the bluish-purple windows and the beauty of the interior make a lovely atmosphere for prayer and meditation. The coat of arms of each contributing nation is to be seen in the cupolas and pictures. All the cupolas are decorated with beautiful mosaic. The windows are of translucent alabaster. The remaining part of the traditional rock of agony lies in front of the altar.
With its 7 striking onion-shaped spires, this is a fine example of old Moscow church style. It was built in 1888 by Tsar Alexander III in memory of his mother, and named after her, St. Mary Magdalene. It is maintained by the Russian nuns. In the crypt lies the body of the Grand Duchess Elizabeth Fedorovna, sister of the Empress Alexandria. She was killed in 1918 by the Bolshevists in Siberia, and according to her wish, her body was brought and buried here.
The Kidron Valley has been crossed by Jesus many times, either going to the temple through the Golden Gate or ascending to the Mount of Olives, where he used to spend the night mainly at Gethsemane or at Bethany in the house of his friend Lazarus. He surely crossed this valley on the memorable evening of Holy Thursday, when, leaving the cenacle, he went with his disciples to Gethsemane, and again after he was betrayed and led to the house of the high priest Caiaphas. According to the local tradition, the Kidron Valley will be the site of the last divine judgment. This belief has made the Kidron Valley a huge necropolis in which Jews, Muslims, and Christians alike choose to be buried.
In the year 700 BC, Hezekiah, king of Jerusalem, in order to protect the water supply of his city from the invading Assyrians, cut in the rock a tunnel to channel the water of the Gihon spring, located outside the walled city, into the pool of Siloam, which was within the walls of the city. The outlet was closed and hidden from the eyes of the invaders. Jerusalem was saved, since the Assyrian army, brought low by thirst and pestilence, failed to conquer the city and withdrew. The tunnel, roughly shaped S, measures 600 yards. The workmen began at each end and accomplished a remarkable engineering feat to meet in the middle within 4 feet of each other.
This church, overlooking the Kidron Valley, was built in 1931 over the traditional site of the house of the high priest Caiaphas. Jesus, betrayed and arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane, was led to the house of the high priest. Here he spent the whole night, and here was the scene of his first trial. Here, St. Peter wept at the crowing of the cock in fulfillment of Christ's words. He denied his Lord 3 times before the cock crowed twice.
And Peter remembered the saying of Jesus, "Before the cock crows, ye will deny me 3 times." And he went out and wept bitterly. This is the place where Jesus ate with his disciples the Last Supper, establishing the communion service. And as they were eating, he took the bread and blessed and broke it and gave it to them and said, "Take, this is my body." And he took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, and they all drank of it, and said to them, "This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many." In the same room, Jesus appeared twice to his disciples after his resurrection. In this same room, the disciples received the Holy Ghost. The first Christians had their headquarters on Mount Zion, and as early as the 1st century, a church was built here. This church evaded destruction in the year 70 AD, and again in 135 AD, since it was out of the military operations. It was enlarged by the Byzantines and called Holy Zion, to associate the first Christian church with the prophecy of Isaiah, "For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem." It was probably from this shrine that the mount received its name. In 614, the Persians destroyed the Church of Holy Zion.
This is one of the most sacred Jewish sites in Israel, second only to the Western Wall. The tomb was described and located here by Rabbi Benjamin of Tudela when he visited Jerusalem in 1173. It is made of stone, covered with embroidered cloth, and carries the silver crown of the Torah.
When the Crusaders were driven out of Jerusalem, they left behind them 37 churches built or rebuilt during their time. St. Anne's Church, which is the best preserved, is one of the finest examples of their construction. It was built in 1100 AD by the wife of Baldwin I in the Romanesque style. It is built over a crypt venerated as the birthplace of Mary and the home of her parents, Joachim and Anne.
The Pool of Bethesda lies a few yards from St. Stephen's Gate and inside the walls of Jerusalem. At the time of Christ, it was just outside the northern wall of the city. It stood near the sheep gate, which led into the temple. It was a meeting place for invalids, as its water was believed to have healing properties. The pool is sacred to the Christians, since here Christ healed a man who had been crippled for 38 years. The pool, buried under debris for centuries, was recently in great part unearthed by the White Fathers.
He brought Jesus forth and sat down in the judgment seat in a place that is called the pavement. This pavement, named Lithostratos in Greek, Gabata in Hebrew, was the scene of the public trial of Jesus. Here Pontius Pilate presented Jesus scourged and said, "Behold the man." Here he finally washed his hands and condemned Jesus to the death of the cross. This pavement, discovered only in 1931, is the actual courtyard of the Antonia, where Jesus was condemned to death and where he started the way of the cross. The stones trodden by the feet of Jesus are striated in order to prevent horses from slipping, and at intervals there are canals in the pavement to collect the rainwater into the large cistern beneath.
Traces of games played by the Roman soldiers, they used to choose a burlesque king, mock him, and then put him to death. The pavement is one of the most interesting and emotional sights in the Holy Land.
Via Dolorosa is the traditional pathway Jesus followed carrying the cross. The events of this sorrowful way are commemorated by 14 stations, of which 9 are related in the Gospel and 5 in tradition. So they took Jesus, and he went out bearing his own cross to the place called the place of a skull, which is called in Hebrew, Golgotha. I am the mother of sorrows, and there is no one to console me. May your son's death grant life to those who wish and pray for it.
The Church of the Holy Sepulchre stands over Golgotha, the place of the crucifixion, and the tomb where the body of Jesus was laid. The crucifixion took place outside the city wall. Since its first construction in 324, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre has stood in almost the center of the walled city. 11 years after the crucifixion, Golgotha was included within the perimeter of the city by a new wall built by Herod Agrippa in the year 44 AD. Hadrian, wanting to root out every remembrance of Jewish and Christian religions, obliterated Calvary and the tomb of Jesus by building a temple dedicated to Jupiter. Instead of desecrating the place, he preserved it. In 326 AD, Constantine demolished Hadrian's temple and erected a magnificent basilica. The Constantine monument was destroyed in 614 by the Persians. Rebuilt on a reduced plan by Abbot Modestos, it was again destroyed by the Caliph Hakim in 1009. The destruction of the church by the Caliph sparked war and animosity for 200 years between East and West in the great collision of the Crusades. The present church was built by the Crusaders.
Calvary was a large rock rising about 45 feet out of the ground. Its name, the place of the skull, probably came from its appearance, which resembles a skull. And when the 6th hour had come, there was darkness over the whole land until the 9th hour. And at the 9th hour, Jesus cried with a loud voice, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And Jesus uttered a loud cry and breathed his last.
Now there was in the place where he was crucified a garden, and in the garden a new sepulchre, wherein no body yet had been laid. Because of the preparation of the Passover, they laid Jesus, because the sepulchre was nigh at hand. Jesus was laid in a tomb at the foot of Calvary. This tomb, hewn out of the rock, was made by Joseph of Arimathea's family. The tomb of Joseph of Arimathea was the type of the rich Jewish tomb. It was composed of 2 chambers. The first served as the meeting place for the mourners. In the second one, on a couch cut in the rock, the corpse was laid. The present monument, with a Muscovite cupola, was built over the site in 1810 by the Greek Orthodox Church and the Russians.
The citadel was built by Herod the Great as a royal palace and as the western defense of Jerusalem. It was protected by walls and by 3 huge towers. This magnificent fortress palace was spared in the year 70 AD by Titus to be used as barracks for the 10th Roman Legion and as a witness to the heroism and might of the Roman soldiers. The massive Herodian blocks are still visible at the base. The citadel was restored by the Crusaders and by the Mamelukes in the 12th and 14th century. Most of the present structure dates from the time of Suleiman the Magnificent, who restored it in 1540. The citadel is also known as the Tower of David, as it is said that Herod built his palace on the site of an earlier fortress built by King David.
The Golden Gate is a 7th century Byzantine structure. It stands over the original site of Gate of Mercy of the Second Temple. Part of the side wall belongs to the primitive structure. It was through this gate that Jesus entered the city after his triumphal entry on Palm Sunday. Christians also attach to this gate the memory of the beautiful gate where St. Peter healed the lame.
I have no silver and gold. I give you what I have in the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth. Walk.
The gate was completely walled up in 1530 by the Turks.
St. Stephen's Gate stands probably on the site of the ancient Sheep Gate. Christians named this gate after St. Stephen, who was traditionally martyred nearby. It is also named the Lion's Gate, after the 2 lions carved in relief on both sides of the entrance. The Arabs call it the Gate of Our Lady, because the road through it leads to the tomb of the Virgin Mary in the Kidron Valley.
This is called Damascus Gate, since it stands at the beginning of an ancient road leading to Damascus. Since the 7th century, the Arabs have called it Bab el-Ammud, Gate of the Column, because of a column raised there on an ancient Roman street built by Hadrian in 135 AD. The gate in its present structure was built in 1537 AD by the Turks. It is the busiest and the most ornate gate.
The site north of the Damascus Gate is believed by many to be the place of the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus Christ. In 1883, the British General Charles Gordon noted this rocky hill which resembled a human skull and suggested that this might be the true Calvary. The presence of a nearby rock-hewn tomb, believed to be 1st century, helped to strengthen this idea, and the scriptural significance of the site appealed to many eminent Christians of that day. An association was formed, and by 1892, sufficient money was collected to purchase the tomb and its surroundings and have it cared for by a resident warden. The garden tomb gives a clear picture of what the place of crucifixion and burial of Christ must have looked like at the time of Jesus. The simplicity and beauty of the site and the peaceful atmosphere of the garden tomb make it a favorable spot for prayer and meditation.
The nearby hill of Calvary, which resembles a skull.
This small museum, an onion-top-shaped building, is designed to resemble the lids of the jars in which the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered. The Essene community considered themselves as the sons of light, and the rest of the world as the sons of darkness. This concept is expressed by the contrast between the whiteness of the shrine and the blackness of the wall over the entrance. The basalt black wall is also supposed to recall the heavy burden which lay on Israel for 2,000 years.
The shrine, symbolizing a cave, is a subterranean building with a tunnel-shaped interior. It houses the famous Dead Sea Scrolls. Scrolls found at Masada, the Bar Kokhba letters, and objects associated with the site of discovery. Its interior induces the feeling of being in a cave. The scroll of Isaiah, 24 feet long, is displayed upon a platform, which, as seen in this slide, resembles a jar-shaped fountain.
This is a $7 million building constructed with the red stones of Jerusalem. It was established with funds from the family of James de Rothschild in England and was inaugurated in 1966. It contains all kinds of facilities, including an excellent library of over 50,000 volumes. The reception hall is decorated with a 24-foot-high Chagall tapestry. The Israeli parliament is composed of 120 members elected by a general vote of all citizens over the age of 18. The elections take place every 4 years.
The temple compound, covering an area of 35 acres, is a sixth of the area of the old city of Jerusalem. According to tradition, this area is the old Mount Moriah, where Abraham prepared the sacrifice of his son Isaac. Solomon made the mountain holy by building the temple on its summit and by bringing into it the Ark of the Covenant. The Temple of Solomon was burned to the ground by Nebuchadnezzar in 587 BC. After the return from captivity in 536, the temple was rebuilt on a reduced plan by Zerubbabel. In the year 20 BC, Herod the Great rebuilt the temple on a large scale and with all its primitive splendors. Herod's temple was completely destroyed in the year 70 AD by Titus. The area was then turned into a heap of rubbish, and as such it remained till the conquest of Jerusalem by the Arabs in the 7th century. The Muslim belief that the Prophet Muhammad ascended into heaven from the historic rock of Moriah gave birth to one of the most important and most beautiful mosques of the Islamic world.
Known also as the Mosque of Omar, it was built at the end of the 7th century by the Umayyad Caliph Abdul Malik bin Marwan. He built a splendid mosque, spending on its construction all the taxes of his province Egypt for 7 years. The mosque, which ranks in sanctity after that of the Kaaba and the tomb of the Prophet in Medina, is the oldest and the most exquisite Muslim shrine in the world. The exterior is a rectangular octagon. The dome, made of special aluminium bronze alloy, shines like gold under the brilliant sun of Jerusalem.
The historical rock of Mount Moriah lies under the dome of the magnificent building of the Dome of the Rock. It is 15 yards long, 12 yards wide, and rises to a height of 2 yards above the ground. This is the traditional rock where Abraham prepared the sacrifice of his son Isaac. Muslims believe that from this same rock, the Prophet Muhammad ascended in a night journey into heaven.
Although the mosque was designed and built by Byzantine artists, all its decorations are Oriental. The interior of the building, with a beautifully decorated cupola, the richly colored stained glass windows, a variety of colors, and an enchanting atmosphere of worship.
This slide shows the naked and irregular surface of the rock of Moriah, the arcades, and the cupola, which is of woodwork, beautifully decorated with designs of rounded figures.
Al-Aqsa, the distant mosque, stands at the southern part of the esplanade and was built between 709 and 715 by the Caliph Walid, son of Abd al-Malik, who built the Dome of the Rock. Very little of the original of Al-Aqsa remains in the present structure, since it has been destroyed and renovated many times. Al-Aqsa Mosque is used for group prayers and can hold 5,000 worshippers, while the Dome of the Rock is used for individual worship.
This is the holiest shrine of the Jewish world. It is revered as the last relic of the last temple. The western wall is a portion of the wall that Herod built around the second temple in 20 BC. Titus, in the year 70 AD, spared this part of the wall with its huge blocks to show the future generations the greatness of the Roman soldiers who had been able to destroy the rest of the building. During the Roman period, Jews were not allowed to come to Jerusalem. However, during the Byzantine period, they were allowed to come once a year, on the anniversary of the destruction of the temple, to lament the dispersion of their people and to weep over the ruins of the Holy Temple, which is why this section of the wall became known as the Wailing Wall.
The custom of praying at the wall continued for centuries. From 1948 to 1967, Jews were not allowed to visit the wall since it was in the Jordanian sector of the city. After the Six-Day War, the Wailing Wall became a place for national rejoicing as well as a place of worship. A large esplanade was cleared to accommodate thousands of worshipers.
This slide shows part of a model of the city of Jerusalem of Herod's time. Its construction took 7 years of research, study, and careful building. The scale is 1:50, and it occupies 1/4 of an acre. The topography is an exact copy of Jerusalem during the time of Christ.
Bethlehem, with a population of about 30,000 inhabitants, stands 5 miles south of Jerusalem on a rocky hill 2,600 feet above sea level. Bethlehem's roots go back to the very remote times of the patriarchs. It was mentioned in the Bible in connection with the death of Rachel. Thus Rachel died, and she was buried on the road to Ephrata, which is Bethlehem. In Bethlehem, Ruth met Boaz and married him. In Bethlehem, David was born and anointed king of Israel by the prophet Samuel. But you, Bethlehem Ephrata, the least of the clans of Judah, out of you will be born for me the one who is to rule over Israel.
In those days, a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be enrolled, and all went to be enrolled, each to his own city. And Joseph also went up from Galilee, from the city of Nazareth, to Judea, to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, to be enrolled with Mary, his betrothed, who was with child. And while they were there, the time came for her to deliver, and she gave birth to her firstborn son.
The birth of Jesus in Bethlehem rendered this little town immortal, won it a deathless renown, and made its name live in the heart of Christianity for 2,000 years.
In the year 135, Hadrian desecrated the cave of Nativity, surrounding it by a temple dedicated to Adonis. This desecration of the cave served to fix the site indelibly for the future. Constantine, removing the Hadrian temple in the beginning of the 4th century, found the cave intact. Constantine then built a magnificent basilica, very richly decorated with marble mosaics and frescoes. In 529, the church was badly damaged by the Samaritans, who revolted against the Byzantine Empire. It was immediately rebuilt by Justinian. The Justinian church is the one still standing that we see today. In 614, when the Persians destroyed all churches and convents, the Church of the Nativity was the only church which evaded destruction. A mosaic scene of the Nativity, representing the wise men in ancient Persian costume, deterred them from their vandalistic purpose. The Church of the Nativity is the oldest church in the Holy Land, and probably the oldest in the world.
The basilica has the shape of a cross, 170 feet long and 80 feet wide. It is divided into 5 aisles by 4 rows of columns, which are of red stone of the country. Fragments of mosaics from the 4th century church were discovered in 1936. They are covered with a wooden floor. The beautiful Greek Orthodox choir, standing above the cave of the Nativity, is all of hand-carved wood from cedars of Lebanon.
Two entrances lead down to the cave, which has a rectangular shape, 35 feet by 10 feet. A silver star with Latin inscription, "Here Christ was born," marks the spot where Christ was born. The original roof of the cave has been replaced by one in masonry since the 4th century. The walls of the grotto are covered with asbestos, guaranteed against fire, donated in 1874 by MacMahon, President of the French Republic. It depicts facts of the childhood of Jesus.
The manger, which lies to the right of the spot where Jesus was born, was probably used for storing fodder. It was the best and driest spot to place the baby, rather than placing him on the hard ground. She wrapped him in swaddling clothes and laid him in a manger. The primitive rock of the cave, blackened by the smoke of candles and oil lamps, may be seen above the site of the Holy Manger.
And there was in the same country shepherds watching and keeping the night watches over their flocks. And behold, an angel of the Lord stood by them, and the brightness of God shone round about them. Fear not, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy. For this day is born to you a Savior, who is Christ the Lord. Although the gospel words do not localize the exact place where the shepherds were, the ancient tradition has fixed it in a field about 3 miles east of Bethlehem.
The old women of Bethlehem still wear the old traditional costume. A long black robe, a belt around the waist, and a white veil flowing down to the shoulders. On a red cone is attached a string of coins set firmly on the head. This type of dress was brought here by the Crusaders.
Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrata, that is, Bethlehem. Jacob erected a memorial over her grave, and this memorial marks Rachel's grave to this day. The small, domed monument over the tomb is from the 15th century. The tomb is sacred to Jews, Muslims, and Christians. Women of the area visit the tomb and often pray for successful childbirth.
With its conical summit resembling a volcano, the Herodian stands in the wilderness of Judea, 5 miles southeast of Bethlehem. It is named after King Herod the Great, who built on its top a magnificent fortified palace. At its foot were palaces, terraced gardens, and pools, and 200 steps of the purest white marble laid to the citadel on the top. After his death, Herod was buried here in a bier, which was of solid gold, studded with precious stones, and had a house.
After his separation from his nephew Lot, Abraham came to Mamre and built an altar for God. Here he received the 3 angels who announced to him that his wife Sarah would have a son. From here, Abraham went to rescue Lot. Here Abraham pleaded for Sodom and Gomorrah. Here David was anointed king. From the 7th century, the site of Mamre was forgotten, and many places claimed the honor of being the true Mamre. In 1926, a German society excavated Haram Ramat el Khalil and found remains of the different buildings which had successively been built at Mamre: Herod's, Hadrian, Byzantine, and Arab. Thus, this place became the accepted site of Mamre.
Hebron is one of the oldest cities of Palestine. According to the Bible, it was founded in the 17th century BC. According to Dr. Hammond, Hebron is the oldest continuously occupied unwalled city in the world. Abraham came to Hebron, and here he bought the cave of Machpelah, which became the family burial place. Sarah, Abraham, Isaac, Rebekah, Jacob, and Leah are buried in Hebron. Hebron is one of the Muslims' sacred cities because of the tomb of Abraham and his sons, who are revered by them as prophets, and it is one of the 4 sacred cities of the Jews. David was elected king here, and Hebron was his capital for the first 7 years of his rule.
Herod the Great, builder of the temple in Jerusalem, was the first to build a magnificent temple over the cave of Machpelah in Hebron. The foundations he laid with large stones are still standing. Some of these stones are more than 20 feet long. This monument, which began as a Jewish temple, was converted in the 4th century into a church by the Byzantines, into a mosque by the Muslims in the 7th century, into a church by the Crusaders, and again into a mosque by Saladin.
And now, please turn over the cassette.